Welcome to TFR Let's Talk, and this is your host Swapnil Bhartia. Accelerated Strategies recently published a Linode Commission report titled Devops and the Alternative Cloud. To talk about this report, we have with us Charles Kolodgy, an analyst from Accelerated Strategies Group. Charles, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Just can you please give us a brief overview of this report? What was the focus? What was the goal? What is the scope of this report?
A lot of people have used the cloud, and it is a very important aspect of IT technology. So we wanted to take a different look at it to a certain extent of seeing what do developers think about infrastructure as a service or infrastructure cloud providers. We wanted to get a feel for, what performance elements they're looking for, or what are they elements they want to find or have in their providers. Are there any roadblocks? And again, we were looking at what developers could say about this as opposed to managers or users or just plain IT. So it was really concentrating on how developers saw it.
What are the features that developers value when they look at cloud provider, and how much that influence that this organization will go with this cloud provider?
I do think they have a lot of influence, and primarily because they're going to go to their management or somebody comes to them and says, I need this. What do you recommend? And that's where they go in and start recommending activities. So what they were looking for, interestingly, we looked at it in many different ways, characteristics of the company, the financial issues, the services, what benefits you got, what selection criteria is. So all of those could come into that play. And interestingly, I think, they were really centered on, I mentioned, security. So they were really, a company I can trust. They wanted companies that had 24/7 support that they could work with. Open source software was another area. So they want a lot of APIs, which help them build. And interestingly, they want, or they appreciate pricing that is reliable, that is predictable. In terms of being able to say, okay, we want to ramp up this thing. How much is it going to cost us to do this? And it's going to be predictable pricing. So they can price it out, or they can go to their managers and say, okay, this is why I think this solution is best. And, from my experience in many cases, I mean, the managers, as long as you make the proper case, they will go with the recommendation. So again, the decision making per se is not with the developers, but they have a lot of influence. And again, they're looking at some corporate issues, not just what's going to be easier for me, although some of that was in there, but they're also looking for trust, security, reliability, uptime issues, reliable pricing, and things of that sort. So kind of, a real mix of corporate elements. From a developer point of view, they're looking for, they really want somebody that has open source, has modern software, that has APIs that I can deal with, that has an easy to use interface that we can build off of. So those sort of things are kind of the technical areas from a developer point, but they're looking at it throughout the areas from a corporate point of view.
Right. And yeah, because they are the ones who have to deal with the issue in the end, whether it's, as you said, whether it's pricing, ease of use of interface, and of course, access to latest technology that are being rolled out. Plus, they also, at times, they also may not want to get logged into a particular vendor also. So there are so many factors. So thanks for explaining that now. What kind of market share did you see after talking to these developers when it comes to alternate cloud providers versus public cloud ecosystem, or hyperscalers like AWS, GCP, or Azure, versus players like Linode, DigitalOcean, OVH? There's so many alternative players. We should talk about these players more so that we know that this is a very, very vibrant and rich ecosystem. It's not just 2 or 3 players there.
Oh yeah, and what was most interesting to us was that the AWSs and the Microsoft Azures, clearly have 50-60% market share. It's to be expected. Google Cloud was around 30. So those are really what we call, the hyperscalers. And then you have kind of product-specific or vendor-specific clouds. I like to call them the heritage companies. So the IBMs, Oracles, probably Rackspace might fall into that. SAP, clouds. Those kind of players that they've used specialized accents, and they only were around 10% each. But we had six of the what would define or call the alternative cloud vendors. Those six vendors, as you mentioned, Linode and the other vendors, they all had a cumulative percentage of about 30%, just a little under 30% when all the vendors are taken into account. And when you take companies that have 5,000 or less employees, it was 30%, and it was pretty much the exact same size as the Google Cloud. So all of those guys, individually have a single-digit share, but combined as a group, as a unit, they are a third in the space. So they have a prominent position in terms of being able to help in the cloud area. And this was in a situation where we only had about 17, I think, percent, it may be a little less, might have been 15% of the respondents said that they are in a multi-cloud environment. So they have other than that multi-cloud, they're capturing a lot of space, and they probably are being some of the vendors that are used most by the smallest players. I do see a lot of future for them, because in the survey we asked, are you going to add multi-cloud? Are you going to increase the number of vendors you're dealing with? And we had 50% said that within the next year that they're investigating adding one or more cloud infrastructure providers to their system. So, multi-cloud is going to be on the way, coming. And, if you're already using one of the large hyperscalers, you're not really going to be jumping and trying to, in many ways, duplicate that service with another one. You're going to be going to a hypercloud vendor who is going to provide the core primitives, who's going to be flexible, it's going to give you the pricing, give you all of those things that pretty much the survey said people are looking for.
Can you also stress on this fact that as enterprise customers, they kind of explore their multi-cloud journey or a strategy, they lean towards alternative cloud providers, not mix another. Of course, they do mix big player hyperscalers also, but why do you believe that kind of alternative cloud providers are they become a preferred choice when enterprise customers look to mix services with hyperscalers?
It really comes down to just talking to them and looking and doing research on the alternative cloud providers. And, they offer, when we looked at the survey, say, what's important to you? Again, a company I can trust, a company that has 24/7, 365 customer support that I can get to, pricing that is predictable, that has an ROI, that has APIs that are easily attunable. So I really think those are the issues. It comes down to as all the material that I read and talking to people, it's those core primitives of just having hardware, software, and networking, and let me put things together as they need be. And again, I'm doing it in a situation where you're proving to me that you're reliable, that you're trustworthy, that you have great pricing, that you have support, and in many ways, you're caring about my business and how I'm going forward. And I think that because these companies are a little smaller and have the ability to concentrate on a few things. So they only run 10 apps or whatever or have these features that those are the guys that you really turn to if you want to drill down into that spec, as opposed to a large area that you have to deal with in many different ways. So we've seen that in many different markets and activities. So I'm a primarily a cybersecurity analyst. So there's a lot of large companies, and then there's a lot of small specialized companies. And I think in some ways this is where this comes out, where the specialized companies can really give you that bang for the buck on something I need right now.
Right. I have heard the word trust a lot. Can you talk a bit about, you have alluded to that earlier, but can you just talk a bit about what kind of response you got, or response that you collected during this report or survey, to better understand that, first of all, of course, when you look at hyperscalers, that's a big name, right? You should trust them, but trust is a totally different thing than having a big brand name. So talk about what are the things when you talk about trust, especially in the context of developer, what does it really mean, and how do alternative cloud providers, they offer their trust in a much better way than a bigger player?
So it was interesting. We asked about different characteristics of company, service, and finance. So under the characteristics of the company that I want to deal with, a company I can trust and a company that's easy to work with, were the top two in the characteristics area. So what that kind of means is, in reality, that I'm a company, and in many cases I'm a small or medium sized company. I'm not one of the large Fortune 1000s. So when I say I need a company I can trust, I need a company I'm giving part of my business to, or relying on my business success to one of these alternative cloud providers, or to a cloud provider. And I think they're turning to alternative cloud providers because they can see, one, there's no vendor lock-in if you're using open source. And again, in my example where I have multiple alternative cloud providers that are working together in some ways, or I'm chaining them together. So I'm kind of bringing that trust issue into this environment, and so that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to, can I trust you with my business? Can I trust you not to misuse my data that I'm giving you, that you're going to use it in some other activity within your large company. The hyperscalers don't really have that capability or even need. The issue of, can I trust you to keep the pricing issue? Can I trust you to be there when I need it? And in discussions because you're able to get to the hyperscaler, and they are a little smaller scale, and they are more involved. You're going to be more involved in the operations with them, connecting to them, talking to them, being involved. I think that's kind of appealing to many people, many organizations.
Was there also any findings where you do realize that, hey, because this is so critical to the business, that they do lean towards alternative cloud providers? You mentioned, that you will be involved deeply. You have, there are not too many customers. Also, I also found that you're just not another ticket. We talk about cattle versus pet analogy in the word, but as a customer, I don't want to be a cattle. I want to be a pet.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that one before. I'll write that one. I'll write that one down and use that issue. But in terms of this environment and the survey, it really just comes down to the issues that people want to have, as we said, better services, ensuring services, having the APIs that I can use, not cluttering activities up with other things, to have reliable services, your uptime that you can deal with. So it's hard to specifically narrow down into that, other than just looking at the big picture of the issues associated with being able to say, you know, I want to be able to reach you, and I want you to understand what I'm dealing with, and I want you to have some environment and care about what we're doing here. And as you say, I think the hyperscalers, are on a, they sell as a mass commodity sort of thing, and the alternative cloud is going to give you more of a customized service issue. I think I heard a concierge kind of environment that you're going to get from an alternative cloud provider that you're not going to get with somebody else.
We have talked about all the rosy picture, the bed of roses, but are there any roadblocks also that these developers saw or they experience when they embrace cloud, whether it's hyperscalers or alternative cloud providers?
I think we had a good discussion. The only thing that was really surprising in the survey was we did ask about roadblocks. You always got to ask the kind of the negative with the positive, and the issue was security and privacy is always top of mind. I think when people talk about their roadblocks, that why I might not use this. The interesting thing was that the developers said that one of the roadblocks was that cloud skills is a roadblock. So I think what that means, and again, I think this is where a alternative cloud can offer more, because you're able to contact them and with that service say, okay, I need some help on this, because I'm very good at setting up this server and with this application when it's sitting here in my data center. I'm not that well versed at setting it up in the cloud, and can you help me with that, or you have tools with that? So that was kind of a interesting part where the developers realized that just because it's IT, but because it's in the cloud, I may need some help on that, and that was a realization. And the last part was on that same question of roadblocks. If you drill down into the bottom part of it, what wasn't a roadblock per se, it was management support. So you turn that around, right? So 28% said management support was a roadblock. So if you turn that around, that pretty much just says that about 72% it's not a roadblock. So you're getting management support to move into these cloud infrastructure environments. So those were kind of the areas that I thought were of great importance in this survey too.
Charles, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about this report, and also share your insights into how the world is moving, because you have when you talk to developers, you have much better insight into what things are actually happening behind the scene, because we mostly hear things in front of us. So thanks for sharing those insights, and I look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.